What's up, my pilots? Angry Poncho here, and we're back doing some Redstone shenanigans. I installed Optifine between videos, so we shouldn't have any more texture bugs. This is part 2, and we're going to be talking about basic logic gates. This is basically ways that we can manipulate Redstone signals in order to combine multiple signals into one, and etc. Gives us a lot more power to do things. So the first basic gate I want to talk about is the NOT gate. This is probably the simplest one in terms of conceptually what it does. It just turns whatever signal is coming in into the opposite of itself. So let me give you the rundown on my little color scheme for all of these circuits we're going to be looking at. The red signifies an input line. The purple is the gate itself, where the logic happens. And the blue is the output line. For a lot of these different gates, I'm not going to be showing all of the possibilities all the possible ways to build the gates, but I'll be showing a representative sample so you understand the different ways it can be done. So yeah, the first is the NOT gate, which just inverts the signal. That's what we'd say. It turns off into on, and it turns on into off. So this is the easiest one to memorize too. All you have to do is use a torch to flip the signal around. So when the power here is on, powers the block, turns off the torch. So on equals off, and then off allows the torch to turn back on and power the line. That's all there is to it. Now there's other ways to do it. For example, you can have a NOT going vertically, so you can see there's dust up there. Sort of can see that there's dust up there. I guess not. You can see that there's dust up there. That's powered. And here again, it's the same thing. This power turns off the torch, which turns off the signal. So on goes to off goes to on. That's all there is to it. And you can also do this any way that you can turn off the torch. So you can have the signal coming on top of the block instead of into the back of it, and it works just the same. So for all of these gates, I have signs on them describing. I sort of give them a name. Like this is the alternative NOT gate where you're coming from the top. Here's a vertical NOT where you send the output to the top. I guess to be really specific here, I guess you could even turn the output around on this one if you wanted and say that you're going to go take it back the way you came. So it's one way to turn the signal around while inverting it. And here it's just horizontal, sort of the default. Alright, so that's NOT. Pretty simple, just turns off to on and on to off. Alright, so now the next one is OR. So the logic for OR is that the output is on whenever any of the inputs are on. So as soon as one of the inputs turns on, the output turns on. And it doesn't matter how many are on as long as it's at least one. So here's a 3-input OR gate. You can see we've got 3 levers here for the red ones. Let me get an empty hand here so I can take a bless of the screen. Yeah, so you got the 3 red spots for the input levers, and then the blue line here is the output, of course. And anytime any of the levers turns on, the output line turns on. And in fact, you can have multiple of the inputs on, and it doesn't really matter. As long as one of them stays on, the output stays on. So this is a simple way of looking at it. In general, you can just run these as redstone dust. These repeaters here are not actually necessary. But what you have to notice is if you don't use a repeater, signal coming from this lever will not only go to the output, but it'll also go backwards through the circuit to whatever this is. So as long as this is not a target, it won't be a problem because this line won't run into anything it can actually interact with. But if you had something there, or if this line ran past something that activated another circuit, for example, you'd want to make sure you had repeaters to keep that signal from going backwards, because a signal cannot go backwards through a redstone repeater. It only goes the one direction. So there's our first OR gate. Here's a simple OR gate with just two lever inputs. You can do this if you had it inside a wall or something, have a lever on each side. I'm not really sure when you'd use this one, but just to show that you can do it with levers on the sides of blocks in the same way you can power redstone from the sides. And in general on these gates, the levers just represent any power source coming into the block. It could be a detector rail, a pressure plate, a tripwire, whatever you like. So here's an extendable OR gate. This basically means, whereas we had a 3 input back there, this one you actually can extend to be as many inputs as you want. So all you have to do is make it wider. So you got the output line over there, and anytime one of these turns on, it powers all the circuits over here. So if you wanted to, you could just extend this purple wool another 2 blocks and put another red input here, extend another 2 blocks, put another red input. And you can do that as long as you want. The only thing you have to pay attention to is that if you end up with an input that's more than 15 blocks away from where you want your output to go, you're going to need a repeater in there to make sure that the signal can reach. So remember, you can only get 15 blocks out of redstone dust before you need a repeater in order to lengthen the signal. But in general, if you're willing to put down repeaters, you can make this as long as you want for as many inputs as you'd like. So as soon as one of them turns on, the output goes on. So here's an OR gate. The text addendum here is sort of to indicate how it's actually working. This is a double NOT. So basically, we have a NOT gate here, where the input powers this block, which turns off the torch, which produces a NOT here. So you can see off goes to on. And when I turn this on, it goes to off. So there's the NOT. And then on the other side, I have that line running down to another torch, which is just another NOT gate. So this NOT actually acts like an OR gate, because any of the 3 can turn off the first torch. Yeah, so you can see as soon as any of the inputs turn on, and as long as at least one of the inputs is on, we get power on the other side. So here's a vertical version. If you're trying to hide circuitry inside walls, or if you just don't have a whole lot of space for these laid out versions, sometimes the vertical can be a good choice. And that's just mostly because it's easy to hide. They're typically a little harder to build. So here we have 2 input vertical. And if you needed more than 2, you could just have the third line come in and OR it again, because OR and OR and OR and OR always just acts like ORing everything together. It works just like you'd expect it would. So this is a pretty simple gate here, where this line comes on, it sends power through. Obviously, it's just running along the ground. The only tricky one is the top line. So when this block gets powered, if you look, there's dust here. So the power here turns on this dust, which, even though there's no line here, powers this block, deactivating that torch, deactivating this line, which allows this torch to turn on, and the signal here drops down and runs off in this direction. So it acts like an OR gate. Either one of them is on, signal goes through. And again, this repeater is optional. If you don't want it, you can put the redstone dust down, but this signal is going to run backwards through the circuit. So just for generality, I put a repeater there to keep the signal from going backwards. And now here I'm going to introduce sort of a standard for these gates. It's going to look something like this for all of them. 3 purple blocks next to each other, 2 red inputs, 1 blue output. So for an OR gate, the standard is just going to be to have the wire go right over the top, just like that. So you turn on either of these, and the output turns on, and you're good to go. Now here, I'm not really caring if the line is running backwards. You could always put a repeater down here instead, and it would work just the same. Yeah, so that's the standard. We're going to have a lot of gates, actually, that I'm going to try to build in this standard form, so that later on we can compare them. That won't be in this video, it'll be in the next one. Okay, so that is OR. So we've done NOT, and we've done OR. Now before I continue, there's an interesting point to make here, is that if you've taken any computer science courses, or engineering I suppose, you'd learn that this is actually functionally complete. And then what that means is that any logic gate that you've seen built in somebody's Minecraft world, as long as it's running on Boolean logic, which is what Redstone does, you can build it using only NOTs and ORs. That's really all you need. So if you remember, I don't know if you've seen it, but when Tavi Ryder did his proof of concept for his instant redstone computer, he only demonstrated a NOT gate that was instant and an OR gate that was instant. Because in general, that's all you need, is NOT and OR. You can do anything with these. And although it does make it kind of a mess, and it means you have to use a lot of them. So the advantage to the gates further down the line is that they're a little more complicated, but they have more logic built in. So it's like you do the work when you build it, and you don't have to worry about it later. Okay, so the next one here is an AND gate. This is like the OR gate, except that the OR gate turns on when any of the inputs is on, and the AND gate turns on when all of the inputs are on. So just one is not enough, it has to be all of them. So here's the standard. We have our 3 purple blocks, our 2 inputs, and our 1 output coming out the back. And the way it works is sort of like a NOT gate, but there's 2 of them put together here. So we have to turn off this torch and turn off this torch in order to deactivate this line, allowing the output torch to be powered. Not too complicated, I hope. If you understand how the NOT gate works, this should pretty much follow directly from that. So turning off both of these torches with input power allows the output torch to be activated. But as soon as one of those goes off, you get the power going through this line, which even though it doesn't look like it, is powering this torch, which turns it off. So that's what AND looks like. You have to have both of the inputs on. So here's another version, it's just a narrower one. Instead of being 3 blocks wide, it's only 2. And it's also bi-level to show you could bring the line in from above and down, or you could bring it from underneath up to here. As long as you can get them within 1 square of each other, you can build this gate, which is just 2 torches here and a 3rd torch on the end. So it's, again, just like 2 NOT gates, actually. This one with the signal coming from the top of the line, or top of the block, and this one with it going into the back of the block. And you see, output stays off until both go on. Did I have... Oh, I already had it on when we came up, didn't we? Whoops, got it backwards. Yeah, so now that this is on and this is on, it turns off both of these torches, which allows this torch to take its powered state. Here's a vertical version. Again, not too difficult to build. Fairly simple design here. So this line, basically you just have the torch right on the other side of this block wherever the input is, which will turn off this line, so that you basically have to get both of these inputs to turn off here before this torch will be powered. So again, it takes 2 to tango for an AND gate. But that's not all. We can do it with 3. Basically, here you have 3 NOT gates. So it's the same thing as the standard, except we've got another gate in the middle here. And in order to keep the lines from getting tangled up, you have to run these in from the sides. So, same dealio, except you have to have all 3 on, because you have to deactivate all 3 of these top torches before the output is able to turn itself on from a lack of signal there. As soon as one goes off goes the output. So the question after you see, okay, we can do 2, we can do 3, I guess the logical question is, can we do as many as we want? And yes! Here's an extendable AND gate, where you have basically just repeat this pattern as long as you like, with a repeater every now and then if it gets too long, and then have a NOT gate on the end, just like this. Yeah, so here you've got 4 inputs, and you have to turn off all 4 torches. You see there's 3. And then 4 turns the output on. So it's only when all of the torches are off that this torch on the end, all of the top torches are off, allows this end torch to turn on and send the signal through. So you can see if I turn off this torch that's farthest away, or turn off this input, which allows this torch to repower, you can see the line dimming as it goes. And so if this length from this torch down here all the way down to the NOT gate was more than 15 blocks, we need to use a repeater. But then again, so pretty much like the OR gate, if you're willing to put a repeater in here every now and then, you can make this as long as you want and up as many signals as you like. So that's it for the AND gates. Another note, functional completeness actually applies to NOT and AND as well. If you have NOT and AND, you can build anything. It's alternative. It's the same as having NOT and OR in general. Okay, so here's our second to last gate for this video. This is a NOR gate. It's a NOT OR. It basically behaves opposite of an OR gate. That's why it's a NOT OR, where the output line is on as long as everybody here is off. But whereas an OR gate, a single input being on turns the output on, here in a NOR gate, a single input being on turns the output off. So you see, once any of these go on, the output goes off. And here's the one torch version, where you basically just have 3 different inputs to a NOT gate, which is what this purple bit here in the middle is. Just like we've seen before, powering this block turns off the torch. And any of these 3 can do it. So as soon as one of them turns on, off goes the output. So that's NOR. Any input being on turns off the output, and the output is only on when all the inputs are off. So here's another version. That one's sort of a NOT gate all in itself. Here I've done a construction where in order to get a NOR, a NOT OR, I did an OR and then a NOT. So here's the OR gate, this first bit, just like we had the OR gate previously. Any of the 3 lines here can power this redstone I'm standing on. And then this block, this redstone, runs into a NOT. So it's an OR NOT, a NOR. Or an aren't. I'm not sure how you'd invert that. Yeah, so any of the 3 turns on, turns off the output. So I can demonstrate here how that goes. Everybody has to be off. So here's the standard NOR. It's just running your torch, running your line across the top like an OR gate, except on the back you have a torch so that you get a NOT. And it behaves just the same. As soon as you turn on one or both, output goes off. Everybody's off, output goes on. That's NOR. Now these different gates are suited for different purposes. It's basically you pick which gate you need based on the behavior you want. There'll be some in-house examples in video number 4 of this series, which is what that house down there is going to be. Alright, here's the last gate for this video. This is a NAND gate. As the name might imply, it's a NOT AND. We'll start off with the standard because it's actually not too complicated. We've got here a NOT gate, and there's another NOT gate next to it. And on the back, we just run the line down. So it's an AND of NOTs, or rather an OR of NOTs. An OR of NOTs is actually an AND in this case. So you see we have to turn off. Oh, I should explain the logic for NAND. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, NOT AND. An AND gate, the output is only on when all of the inputs are on. In general, just 2, so when both of the inputs are on. So a NOT AND is going to do the opposite. It's going to be off when both of the inputs are on, and it's going to be on otherwise. So you watch here, both of the inputs are on, which turns off the output. As soon as one goes off, output goes on. And it stays on until both of the inputs are on. So it does the opposite of an AND. So here's another way to build it. It's a bi-level, just like the other gates we've had, the AND gate we had earlier. This one's actually simpler. If you look back, this is a bit tricky, but here's the standard NAND. So you got 2 torches on the tops, and then on the back you just run the wire down. Now let me zip over here to our standard AND gate, and you'll see it looks the same except we have this torch on the back. So what we're doing here is a little bit tricky because this is a NAND gate followed by a NOT, which if you write that all down, it's not, and. So NOTs are just like negative signs, and that when you have 2 of them, they cancel each other out. So not, and is and. So when I showed you this AND gate, it's actually a not and AND. Kind of complicated, eh? Once you work with it for a little while and you build a couple yourself, you start to understand how it's all being put together. I highly recommend that for anyone who's actually serious about doing some fun redstone stuff. Build some circuits yourself, try some stuff out, see if you can get any of these designs to work. There'll be links, very helpful links, in the description to the wiki pages for these sorts of things. So there's our standard NAND. There's our bi-level NAND. I won't show you that one, just trust me, it works. Here's a vertical NAND. Any of these gates that have AP on the bottom are designs I came up with. So this one is interesting, just a vertical NAND. So that torch, this piston down here is to help show you the output because it's hard to see up there. So right now it's on, and as soon as either of these, there you go, it has to be both of them have to be on in order for the input to be off. Any other combination makes the output on. There you go. So this is the NAND gate that the wiki will tell you to build, and I don't really like it because it's unstable in the output. What that means is it behaves the right way in the long run, but it flickers. So check this out. So NAND means if I turn on both of these, the signal should be turned off, right? So AND would be both on goes to on, NAND would be both on goes to off. Okay, so we'll try it. Turn this one on, turn that one on. Okay, it works. It looks good. Turned it off. All right. Let's try in the other order. Turn this one on first. You see that? The output flickers. Now watch again. If you turn on the lower input first, the output stutters. It goes off for a moment, and then turns back on a tick later. What's happening is, when you power this line, it powers this block, which turns off this torch, turning off this line, allowing this torch to turn on. But in order for that signal to propagate from this torch up to that line to that torch takes, I think, 1 or 2 ticks. And that's the flicker you're seeing, where both of the torches are off for just a moment. So if I get the angle right here, you should be able to see. Watch that for just for a moment. Just for a moment, both of the torches are off. It's pretty quick. It's easier to see, actually, if you watch the output line and just see it flicker. Yeah, so then once you've turned them both on, it does turn it off properly, but that flickering could cause a problem if you've got, say, I think a sticky piston down here, or if this circuit ends up going to a sticky piston. Hang on now. Yeah, because sticky pistons do some weird stuff. Oh, dang it. When you move them for only 1 tick. So if you watch this, sometimes, I guess it isn't fast enough. That's good. Okay, so it must be 2 ticks long then. Yeah. Okay, that's not too much of a big deal then. But if you move a sticky piston for 1 tick, at least in previous versions I know, it would abandon the block it was stuck to. It would unstick. So that could cause problems if you're expecting it to actually stick properly. Alright, so that's all for part 2. I'm sure that some of these gates are going to be a bit confusing at first, and I recommend, if you're actually into this, to look at the page on the wiki and watch the video a second time. And I especially recommend that you try and build some of them yourself. Start with the simplest ones like NOT and OR, and work your way up to NOR and NAND, the tougher ones at the end there. And if you have any specific questions about gates, you can put it in the comments, and I'll be happy to respond to you down there. And if there's a general question that no one seems to get because I didn't explain it properly, I'll be sure to address it in the next video. So that's all for this one, basic gates. Next time we're going to do 3 tougher kinds of gates, and then the video after that we're going to do some in-house demonstrations of what you can do with all of these. So we'll get to the meat and potatoes pretty soon. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time.